Week 10 is upon us. The trade deadline is done. We're going to go over Week 10 ranks. We may have some key players coming back from injuries and some key players on bye. Michael Govier from the Palazzo Podcast joining me coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Michael Govier. We are brought to you by Circa Sports Casino and Sportsbook in Las Vegas and the good folks over at DraftKings Pick 6. I'm here with Michael Govier. You know him from the Palazzo Podcast, which airs Tuesdays and Sundays on YouTube Live. Michael, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, I'm coming to you live from heaven, it seems. This looks very ethereal. This light, we have an incredible sunny day on November 6th in Michigan. I'm taking advantage of that today for sure. It's great to be here, Jeff.
Good. Glad to have you. And yeah, I had to shut that blind as well. We got would have had a lot of light pouring in. Of course, I'm used to that in Southern California out here. But anywho, enough about the weather. People aren't here for weather talk. Maybe they are, but sorry, I'm not much of a weather guy. But hey, you got the Palazzo Podcast. Tell everybody what you do with the podcast.
Well, it's real simple. You know, we cover fantasy baseball when baseball's on, and now we cover fantasy football when fantasy football gets going. And right now we're doing 2 shows a week. Got you on Tuesday evenings for waiver wire chatter, standard issue, boilerplate policy, and of course Sunday mornings, 11:15 a.m. Eastern, live. Me and Mike Virginia, and you guys could check us out. And you know, big shows like you guys, you always get viewers, but you know, smaller shows, you got a chance to maybe sneak in a chat and get an answer to your questions before kickoff. So that's us. We're the little guy trying to make good.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of like a between guy. I'm not quite big, not quite little, but we'll see. You know, I'm growing, but that's unrelated. The trade deadline passed yesterday, and a lot of the big moves happened in the fantasy world prior to this week, but there was still a decent amount of activity. I'm going to ask you a non-fantasy reaction, though. Your Detroit Lions going out and getting that pass rusher and Zadarius Smith. Your reaction?
I'm very pleased. I knew we would not get Max Crosby. Everybody here, hey, let's get Max Crosby. The Raiders suck, so obviously we could just have him. No, that's not how it works, right? I would have loved to have had him, especially since he played at Eastern Michigan here. The stories seemed to align, the narrative aligned, but I'm happy with Zadarius Smith because they weren't going to give us Myles Garrett, even though the Browns their season's toast. But Myles Garrett's still a guy who's in his prime. He's not done, so you're not giving up on Myles Garrett just to get some draft picks. So I'm very pleased with what Brad Holmes did. There's just been, we sit here today, again, on November 6th, and I'm thinking, man, the Detroit Lions really are a Super Bowl contender, and it's a real thing. It's so difficult to describe how much of a transformation has taken place here in Detroit, in the Motor City, with this team after decades of pain. Mostly all I've ever known. Outside of the 90s when I was growing up, when we had some good teams, Wayne Fonts did his thing with Barry Sanders. It's just been real rough. And it's still hard to believe that this team really has a chance to be a Super Bowl contender, and Zadarius Smith helps make that more possible.
Yeah, I think I told you this before. My mom grew up in Detroit, so I have a soft spot for Lions. I was at the Thanksgiving Bears game where they returned the overtime kickoff for a touchdown. I mean, I've seen the pain there a little bit here and there. I think the Lions are a wagon. I think they might be, we'll put the Chiefs in their own category. They've earned that. But I think the Lions are the next best contender and maybe the team playing the best ball right now in the entire league.
That's a fact. That truly is. Although I know there's some concern that they can't get a pass rush still, but I think Zadarius Smith, who can be injured a lot, he does seem to have a little bit of frailty to his game at times, and he's a little older. But I think he will open it up more opportunities for that defensive line and that front seven overall. And I really do believe that the Lions should absolutely win, at minimum, the NFC. I don't know if they'll win the Super Bowl, but they definitely should win the NFC.
Yeah. There's the era of good feelings surrounding the Washington Commanders, maybe not entirely in D.C. right now, but the Commanders are a feel-good story. They're kind of like this year's Lions from last year. They went out and got Marshawn Lattimore. Big deal there. I feel like they're already a pretty decent pass defense. Now they can just lock down one side.
Yeah, I think what you consider with Washington is Jaden Daniels, and we all go crazy for Jaden. But the defense has been playing better. It really has. And now if you add a veteran like Lattimore, put it in the hands of a guy like Dan Quinn, who clearly is starting to have an impact on the consistency of that defense. And you look at what's going on in Dallas and how much worse they've become without Dan Quinn. I think that matters. So this is good news for, I don't know how much of a good news fit it is for fantasy when it comes to watching, because we want high scoring. We want games that will run up the score for sure. But in real world, this is great news for the Commanders.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed. And I think it's something that they can just, I think that it helps them a lot focus defensively a lot there. We didn't see too many big fans, skill position players get dealt. We saw Jonathan Mingo for a 4th rounder. I still don't get that one there. Years of Control had another good trade deadline, I guess is it. But, the bigger moves happened prior to this week. But, we did see Mike Williams go to the Steelers. We did see Mingo go to the Cowboys. Khalil Herbert to the Bengals. Any of those really catch your eye at all?
I've always been a Herbert guy. I never give up on him. Every year he seems to end up with like 500-600 yards, and he has a couple games that are really helpful in the middle of the season or random parts of the year for the Bears. So the fact that Zach Moss is on IR now for the Bengals, your Cincinnati Bengals, who have one of the best running backs in football, in my opinion. I love Chase Brown. I was big on Chase Brown this year. He is clearly the 1A there, but having a guy like Herbert helps. And then I have to say there was a time in my life where I thought Jonathan Mingo and Bryce Young were the future of Carolina football.
Right. I was big on Mingo for a while too. I mean, if the team spends that draft capital, I'm like, okay, I'm interested. Yeah, sure, why not? And then he grades out so poorly, like in all the advanced metrics. That's the thing that kind of scared me. But then again, he's had really bad quarterback play. He may not have good quarterback play in Dallas for a while either. We'll see what Cooper Rush can. We'll talk about that soon. But I like that the Bengals added Khalil Herbert. I'd prefer if they added an edge rusher. We want to talk about a team that really desperately needs a pass rusher right now, opposite Trey Hendrickson. That would be really, really nice to have. But that didn't happen, and that's kind of telling, which is why me as a Bengals fan is kind of about this season, because they didn't go out and get the defensive help they needed.
Yeah, you guys are in a worse position defensively than Detroit is. I will agree with that. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's move on to some of the Week 10 matchups and rankings. There's a lot to talk about. We alluded to it earlier there, but Dallas Cowboys are without Dak Prescott, hamstring injury. Cooper Rush is going to start at least this week, and it looks like long term. I haven't seen the Cowboys officially put Dak on IR yet, but that might be coming this week too.
Yeah, Cooper Rush, CMU's finest. Yeah, fire up chips. Cooper Rush had a great game last year. He stood out and did something. But, as far as the Dallas offense, this thing's over, man. I mean, they're going to be behind the games. They'll be throwing opportunities. Dallas' season, to me, I don't like to pull the plug in the NFL because it's the parity. It's parity galore in the NFL. We all know that. And you never owe out of it, truly. But Dallas is toast to me. McCarthy's probably done for sure. So I'm sad if I don't have Dak right now for a couple of games. But I think CeeDee Lamb will still get fed. Yeah,
I think so too. As long as his shoulder is okay. They said week to week, but they're confident he's going to play. We'll see about that. I think Ferguson gets fed a lot too. I think that's another one where he's going to get a lot of targets. I mean,
he still hasn't scored.
I know, it's crazy, right? He's getting tons of targets. He's getting all the snaps, but just can't get in the end zone. It's really annoying. But anyways, I have, for what it's worth, on Rush. I've got him this week. I've got him kind of pretty low. I'm looking at my quarterback rankings right now. I've got Cooper Rush down at 23. But I'm going to probably move him up a couple spots because Trevor Lawrence now seems like he's banged up. Daniel Jones, I mean, he'll get there with the but yeah, it's Carolina, though. That's why I have Jones ahead of him. It's just Carolina versus Philly. I think I'll keep Jones ahead of Rush. I don't feel proud about it, though.
I don't think, I was expecting Daniel Jones to turn it on once, maybe around week 5 because of the ACL. It's not easy to come back from an ACL, even though they're coming back faster than they ever did before. But it's still hit or miss. It's still like, hey, is this Giant offense going to score 20 points today? Can that absolutely happen? And they barely were able to do that against Washington. I mean, that game at halftime was a joke, but Daniel Jones ended up with nice numbers. So that's a guy against Carolina who should play well, but it's also in Germany. And, when you go overseas, man, I don't know. I can't trust that it's just going to be a typical situation out there because it's just a different vibe and it's a long trip.
Sure. Long trip, and how quickly does one team acclimate versus the other? I mean, we're talking about two dysfunctional teams anyhow, too. I mean, it's already, if they played this game in my backyard, it would be a difficult acclimation. I don't have much of a yard, so it'd really be piled up on each other. But it's the point, though, is like these are already bad teams. And in the case of Carolina selling off, I think that's smart of them to do that, by the way. But it's going to be kind of tricky there. We're going to hit up, by the way, thank you for the questions in the chat there. There's some really, we are going to hit those up there. So I appreciate that. Especially the starred questions there, the super chats. We will get to those, I promise. But we're going to go ahead and jump in on that, but we'll answer one of them right now. Michael asks, should you go ahead and try to get Prescott and Lamb on a buy low opportunity? What do you think about that?
Makes sense to me. Less Prescott because, you don't like to read into things, but what happened on the podcast where Micah Parsons ranking the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he doesn't mention his own quarterback. That was an issue. That is a thing. I don't think that's just nothing. So I'm definitely, if someone will give up on CeeDee Lamb because they think that Prescott isn't going to be around or that Cooper Rush won't get CeeDee the ball enough, I absolutely 100% would love to get a buy low on CeeDee.
Yeah. He's got a number. I'm guessing this is a super flex league. He's got Love, May, and Carr.
Wow.
Is trade shits there. I mean, I think something involving Jordan Love would have to be included. I mean, I know it's a dynasty league. You maybe May feels maybe someone can jump in on May, but I think it's going to be a couple of years before that really comes to fruition. Might take a while just building talent around him.
Yes, but May's schedule, okay, after Chicago, you got the Rams. Their defense isn't good. Miami's defense, I don't fear them. Indianapolis, Arizona. Nice little stretch of decent defenses where May could stretch his wings a little bit. Yeah,
and I guess and if you're in a super flex league, someone's going to need that help right away. So, it could be still even this year sort of value there. So, good question. Appreciate it there. Let's talk about a couple other quarterbacks here. Sam Darnold. Starting to show some signs of some cracks in the armor. I didn't think he looked that great against the Colts. I know the yardage was there, but the turnovers were really bad.
Yeah, the touchdowns keep on rolling in. He had 3, right? But you're right. The turnovers are a problem, and he is Sam Darnold. And I don't care what anybody says. Kevin O'Connell's a great coach. He's a quarterback master, the guru, the whisperer, whatever term you prefer. I think I would have tried to maybe trade him a couple weeks ago if I was trying to get out of that situation. But, rest of the season, Darnold's a guy that, again, not a lot of defenses to fear. They do have to play Chicago twice. But the problem is now that Chicago seems like, after that Hail Mary and that, oh my gosh, what a that stupid, poor maneuver by that defensive back to kind of dance before the game ended there really has affected the team a little bit. It seems like they didn't even show up for the Arizona game. So the question is here, if Chicago bounces back, will they be okay? But they might kind of be falling apart here. So outside of those Chicago defenses, though, a lot of good matchups for Darnold rest of the season. So I would stick with them for sure. I would have tried to trade him weeks ago, but I think now you got to stay there rest of the season.
Yeah, I've got him in my top 10 this week. I love the matchup against Jacksonville, weather permitting. Really like it there. So, and that really should have been a blowout win over the Colts. I mean, if not for the fumble 6, if not for throwing a pick in the end zone, I mean, I think the Vikings win going away in that one. They missed 2 field goals. Turns out their kicker was hurt. There was a lot of reasons why that game shouldn't have even been close. One other quarterback I wanted to talk about today is CJ Stroud. It's been a struggle for a while now for CJ Stroud. He gets the Lions, the aforementioned wagon of a team. I don't know if he gets Nico Collins back. They've been kind of purposefully vague about Collins' status. Is it really just a matter of do they have Collins or do they not have Collins, or is there something greater at work here with Stroud?
Well, look what they had to do in their last game. And I know it was a short week and they lost Steph Diggs coming into that week. You do have to consider that, right? But, Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie III. These are 2 guys that I've watched year after year, the last couple of years, waiting. Hey, maybe CJ Stroud will make one of them come alive, and it has not happened. And I don't believe that there's a better chance of that happening now. So the receivers are weaker. Nico's back. If he plays, that's great. I do believe that the running game is the key to Houston's offense. So Mixon's been a huge part of that, and if they can build off that and maybe he doesn't throw for 300 yards anymore. Maybe Stroud, if he can give you 225, 250 passing and throw a couple touchdowns consistently, that might kind of be the new ceiling of where we are this year with CJ.
Yeah, which might be fine for Houston. It's not fine for us. And that's the problem. You didn't draft it. You drafted him as a top 10, top 6 quarterback, and you're now. I've got him at 19 this week. It's tough. I mean, do you start Joe Flacco or C.J. Stroud this week? Matthew Stafford or C.J. Stroud this week? These are not preposterous questions.
Yeah, you're right about that. I might go in a couple of the directions, to be honest with you, for sure. And I had a couple best balls where I doubled down on Stroud and Love, and that has not worked out like I wanted it to this year at all.
No, it looked for a while that Love might, but he's been banged up too much. He'd been getting at least the touchdown passes whenever he played, but also you lose all those games too, which is an added bummer there. One more quarterback, Caleb Williams. I thought he had turned a corner. The Arizona game was just an unmitigated disaster. I mean, I think you can say the Washington one fine. This is an up-and-coming defense. Arizona, I know they're playing better than expected, but this is still not that ferocious of a defense. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I didn't go in on Caleb at all in any leagues this year, no matter the format, even Superflexes. I just felt there's something about his game that, even though he's the number 1 pick, there's something there that was not ready to go. Wasn't NFL ready, in my opinion. Now, he had that game in England when he threw his 5th touchdown, right? He had 4 touchdowns in that game. He had thrown a 5th that got called back. I remember I was watching that game. And since that point, it seems like we've kind of gone in a different direction. I'm not saying there's anything to do with that one play. It was just kind of a marker to say, okay, Caleb Williams was really turning the corner, heating up, really finding his own with his great receiving crew. I mean, he's got great receivers. He does. I don't care if you're not a Keenan Allen fan, you think he's too injured. There's a great team of receivers to throw to there, and a tight end who I love, Cole Kmet. Yes. So he should be better, and there are weapons there. He doesn't have Stroud's excuse. His only excuse is that he's in his first year, and maybe CJ Stroud. He had such a great rookie year that it's unfair for us to consider that Caleb Williams could do anything like that. So I'm out. I'm not interested. I expect that maybe he could have a game or two here where he pops again, but otherwise I'm not interested.
Yeah, he gets the Pats this week. Maybe this is one of the game or twos, but still, I've got him down at 18. He even injured his ankle in that final play. Wyu is in a 20-point deficit. Eberflus said he wanted to work on the 2-minute drill. Okay. I think, we saw Dennis Allen get fired this week. I think Eberflus isn't that far behind. It might be just a case of wait till the end of the season because that's the way the McCaskey family runs. But I don't think he lasts into next year.
Oh, it seems so promising, too. The defense plays well, and he seems to have a role in that to a certain extent. But, yeah, it's hard to disagree with you. It's possible, too. Don't forget. Remember last year, Tyson Bagent. He got in the games. He played a couple of games for the Bears. He is the backup if this ankle injury is more of an issue than we realize for Caleb.
Sure. Definitely something to watch in practices this week. We're going to turn our attention to running backs in a second. But first, got a quick note from our friends over at DraftKings.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Big thanks to DraftKings Pick 6 for their sponsorship and my co-host Nick Whalen for his inspired read of said promo there. Here with Michael Govier of the Palazzo Podcast, Jeff Erickson here. We are talking running backs now. Christian McCaffrey got designated to return from the IR on Monday. It allows him to practice. This has always been pointed as the week that he returns. Do you expect him to play this week, and how much do you expect to see out of him?
Oh, man. Such a bummer to think about. I didn't have the courage to not draft him. I had 2 leagues where I had the first overall pick, and I did it twice. So
yeah.
I didn't know it'd be this bad, but Calf coming into the preseason was scary, and then it got into the Keeley's world, and he's going over for injections and all the stuff you just don't want to hear. So having said all that, he's rested up. He's very, very rested after a grind of a playoff run and being on a really good team where they relied on him heavily with a lot of touches. So I'm going to say he does play this week because they need a win. They need to get back on track. And they're also taking on Tampa Bay, who went to overtime on a short week on the road against the best team in football. So maybe they could win it without him. But I feel like it'd be a good time to just throw him in there and give him at least 10 touches.
Yeah. I'm kind of assuming a pretty big role for him this week. Because I think they've been planning this all along. I think that they do need him. I think one of his pivots, Jordan Mason, is dealing with his own injury there with the shoulder. Don't know how much Mason's going to be able to play. Garendo looked good, but I think the team takes on a different dimension. So with McCaffrey, especially in the passing game, I think that's the one thing that changes a lot.
Yeah, he's such an X factor there, racking up points in the PPR leagues where you really want to have him. I will say, both those times I drafted him, they were 1-point PPR leagues, and that was the big X factor for me because if he had played a full season, 80 catches is always in play.
Yeah. Curious to see what the projections, the pick him games, including our sponsor DraftKings Pick 6, what they will have for him. Currently, no projection yet. I'm not surprised. We're going to wait to see what the practice reports say. Probably won't find out until Friday as far as that goes. But I'm ranking him as if he's going to play, Michael. I've got him at 10 this week. So there's not quite peak of his powers yet. Maybe he gets 80% of the snaps, but I have him over the likes like Aaron Jones and James Conner. And ahead of Jonathan Taylor, next guy I wanted to talk about on our list, really struggled on Sunday night against the Vikings. Is he really hurt by the quarterback change?
Well, I guess I'd wonder. We're expecting that Flacco's just going to throw so much more, so Taylor becomes secondary in nature. That just doesn't seem plausible or consistent to me. And Shea Steichen's a smart guy. He knows offense, I
was more from a standpoint of like Richardson's a threat to run, so they have to kind of watch the edge a little bit more, something like that. It just
okay.
Just kind of like how running backs have always fared well when they've had Lamar Jackson because they find one less man in the box. That sort of thing. And I kind of wonder if the same was true with Richardson and Taylor.
Interesting. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. You think about a guy like Jonathan Taylor who should be able to run the ball 25 times a game. I know we don't really live in that world anymore, but he's one of the few backs who could do that. And there's no threats to him as a backup. And the receivers are, I know some people like Josh Downs, and there might be a future for Adonai Mitchell, but the receivers just don't wow me. Michael Pittman is a very overrated receiver, in my opinion, more of a name, a USC guy than anything else. And I think Joe Flacco will be his best self if he can run more of a consistent play action where Jonathan Taylor is the first threat as opposed to what you had with the dynamics between Richardson and Taylor. So I'm optimistic that Taylor still will really benefit from this quarterback change.
Yeah, it could in the long run. I think if they unlock offense, Flacco was terrible against the Vikings. And that may be just Brian Flores confusing the heck out of him with his blitz schemes. I mean, you could hear the announcing crew that we're struggling to pick it up a little bit too. So it's probably confusing, but I don't know. I want to see it a little bit more there. Buffalo is another similarly tough challenge. Maybe not on the Brian Flores sort of level, but I don't think this will be an easy game either.
I did go in on Joe Flacco in the leagues where I had Anthony Richardson. I wanted to have him. And these are Superflex leagues, just to be clear, folks.
Right.
It's where I felt I had to have my quarterback in there. So I paid a lot for Flacco, despite this Minnesota, Buffalo, Jets, Detroit run, which is more daunting now than maybe I realized. But I think Flacco's due for a stinker here and there, and he does bounce back and has big games. And Buffalo, to me, they're a ticking time bomb in terms of being a defensive, consistent masterpiece, an X factor on defense. I just don't buy it. So I think Flacco against Buffalo is a solid play, and I will be starting him even in places where I don't necessarily need to. I'm in. I think Flacco will be all right.
All right. And teams have been able to run the ball against the Bills too. Achane had a good game last week against them, so Taylor could be a lot better this week. So, all hope is not lost when it comes to that rushing offense. Maybe it was just a one-off last week. We'll see. Let's move on. Tyrone Tracy again, the lead back for the Giants last week, 16 carries. Okay, 16 for 66 against the Commanders. Not super involved in the passing game. That was a weird game, though, too. This week, they get the game in Germany against Carolina. Apparently, we're declaring war on Germany by sending the Giants and the Panthers there. But I think that Tracy's got a really nice matchup this week. Probably can't use him for DFS purposes unless you play like the all-day slate. But I do really like his setup this week.
Yeah, there's no doubt too. The last 3 weeks, Singletary's been on the active roster. Snap shares 21%, 39-28. Singletary's been way behind Tracy. It's definitely Tracy's backfield right now, unless there's an injury or, I don't know, he pulls a Ramondre and fumbles a bunch, and then suddenly he's the backup for like an hour. But then he comes back in and scores a touchdown the next week anyways. So I am very, very pro Tracy. I love the matchup. Carolina needed a win, and they got it. I don't expect the defense to hold and be, oh, wow, that front seven for Carolina is really taken off since that Germany game. I just don't see that being a narrative. So
yeah, I'd agree. I agree with that. By the way, sidebar, Ramondre Stevenson, the fumbling thing was hilarious to me because your punishment for fumbling is to watch Antonio Gibson start in front of you. Do we not know our history here at all?
Exactly. I have Ramondre in 6 to 8 leagues. I was very pro Ramondre this year. He was a cheap buy in drafts, and I did not buy that. I know that Mayo knew where he was going to do well. He wasn't going to bench Ramondre and just go with Antonio Gibson on 20-plus carries with a rookie quarterback or Brissett in the backfield. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I thought that was just a big bunch of poppycock.
Yeah, I may have benched Stevenson in one league because of that. So
yeah,
it was, but it's just like Antonio Gibson fumbled all his entire career in Washington. I mean, it's like, come on, do we really buy that? Anyways, they even kind of hinted at it too. They didn't say, oh, he's definitely down. It's just he's gonna not start the game. Is all they said, and that's basically was one series is all it was.
Read between the lines, right?
Indeed. The other side of that Germany game, the Carolina running backs. We might see Jonathan Brooks for the first time. Chuba Hubbard's been beautiful for us, just a diamond in the rough, not even the rough, but we found love in a hopeless place with Chuba Hubbard, and now I don't know if we're going to be able to use him as much going forward because they invested a lot in Brooks in the draft. He's got a lot of talent. Curious to hear your take on the Hubbard Brooks timeshare.
Chuba is just so useful from a volume standpoint. Yes, he may not be the fastest, right? He's a plotter, but he gets the volume, and coaches could trust him not to turn the ball over and just kind of be there. He's there. And sometimes that's all you need, especially when it comes to running backs in fantasy. Jonathan Brooks is the shiny new toy, so we all get excited, and we really want him to thrive. But is he really going to thrive? Are we really going to jeopardize Jonathan Brooks with this Carolina offense with Bryce Young and rookie coach Dave Cannavales? I don't think that's the case at all. So I'm pro Chuba until I see otherwise. I know Carolina is really, really, really one of the worst teams in football from every standpoint. The front office, the owner, of course, Mr. Tepper, a lot of problems there. But I don't even believe that they will screw this up. I think Brooks maybe gets a couple touches if he gets going here. I'm still very pro Chuba until I see otherwise. Yeah,
me too. I've got Chuba 22, which is good enough to start. Running backs are shockingly deep. Like you can find in my rankings, I've got like Ramondre at 24, and I don't think that's an insult. It's just I think there are a lot of good startable running backs. So Chuba's among them. If I have them, I'm probably using them.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah, I for what it's worth, I have Brooks at 33. I think he gets more than your typical backup, but less than a timeshare. For what it's worth, and I don't know. We'll see. I think if he gets rolling, they may keep with him, but may just be like, hey, you got your 5 touches this game, and we'll get you more next week.
Hey, you hang in there, kid.
Yep, exactly. We're going to talk wide receivers. There's a lot of hurt wide receivers. We're going to talk about all of them and then talk about some of the guys we're starting. But first, I'm going to share a note from our friends over at Circa. It's football season, and the best place to catch the games is at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim, 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you. From owner suites to cabanas, day beds to stadium booths, there are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year with the temperature-controlled pools. It's a great place to catch the games all season long. Stadium Swim, located at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book today at circalasvegas.com. Big thanks to Circa, the big friends of RotoWire. We've been there the last 3 summers for our annual thing. They had us out to promote their Survivor contest. Their owner, Derek Stevens, is a big Lions guy, believe it or not. So he's living his best life, owning a casino, and his Lions are good. So life is good. Yeah, something, good if good to be him. Let's talk injuries. It hasn't been so good this last week. CeeDee Lamb got hurt. A.J. Brown got hurt. Drake London got hurt. Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper didn't even play. Man, I'm old enough to remember when receivers were the safe play and you didn't draft running backs high because they got hurt too much.
Those were the days. Yes, yeah. Once upon a time, Jeff. Look, A.J. Brown's been a real bummer for me. I thought he was, when healthy he was just so reliable. Even if the Philly offense was falling apart and Hurts didn't know what to do anymore, he could rely on A.J. Brown. So if that's a problem, I'm really bummed by that. And also Drake London. I mean, I watched that game when I was wrapped up at FPAS. We were sitting there. The only game they had on was the Cowboys and Falcons. And, man, Kirk Cousins looks so comfortable in that offense now more than ever, and he looks like his old self, and he just was schooling the Cowboy defense. And to not have London is a disappointment because this was really his breakout year. This was his chance to get with a veteran quarterback and show why I thought he was one of the 10 best receivers in football. I really did. So I'll be real bummed about that. These injuries are really rough, but there's always somebody up next ready to rock too. So we got to think about where we can go from there.
Yeah, exactly. They said it's a pain tolerance issue. I hate it when they put the onus on the player like that. I mean, yeah, it's real pain too, guys. I mean, it's not just this it's just how much can he power through? Just shoot him up with painkillers. No, it's not that easy. But anyway.
What? Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't think it is, but
it's not. You're right.
But if he does sit out, how much are we bumping up Darnell Mooney? How much are we looking at someone like Ray McLeod this week?
Man, I could remember myself in a chair just like this back in August. I was deciding between Rondale Moore or Darnell Mooney in a lot of best balls. Oh. Yeah, a couple went Rondale, and I still believe that would have gone well, but it didn't. But Mooney is a guy I think he's a guy you could trust, and if you still have trades in your league, you still have trades available to you, and Mooney is available to you, I would still want to get him because there's a rapport there. And even if there's no London, they're not going to load up on Mooney either because that offense is so balanced. So I'm pro Mooney, a little less on Ray McLeod. I would also think about Hodge. Now, Hodge did score a touchdown a couple weeks ago, right? He had a big play. He is a guy that could do a little bit for you. Not a lot of volume, but it's someone you should consider if London's out.
Yeah, I think so too. CeeDee Lamb, they're optimistic that he can play. But then they also said week to week. I do like that he came back into the game. Unlike Brown, unlike a couple of these other injured receivers, he actually made it back into the game. So that I kept him as like a normal ranking. I downgraded him a little bit because of the quarterback situation, because of his status. Maybe if he plays fewer snaps, but I do think he plays against the Eagles.
Yeah, he'll definitely give it a shot. He should play, especially since he came back in, like you said. 3 straight weeks of double-digit targets for Lamb and big numbers, too. And if Cooper Rush is the guy throwing him a lot of balls, I don't see why that won't happen again unless this injury gets, re-aggravated or gets worse during that game.
Yeah. The Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper situation in Buffalo is noteworty to me because, Cooper was, kind of took some pressure off of Coleman. He immediately had a couple big games. Shakir looked good with that, because of that. All of a sudden, you kind of take that away. You take away maybe Coleman, who had a really bad drop. Should have had a touchdown against the Dolphins. What are you doing with this Buffalo passing game this week?
Oh, over on the Palazzo podcast, me and Mike Virginia loves Keon Coleman. He was hyping him up preseason, thought that big size could really do wonders in the red zone. We all know how that is an ideal situation to score points, to score touchdowns. So I'm going to join him, and I'm going to say I'm still a believer in Keon Coleman. The guy's a rookie. You're going to learn along the way. Here in Detroit, we've seen a guy like Jamison Williams. He went through a lot, and he's gone through a lot again. But he has gone through a ton to get to where he was this year to finally really start to look like a legitimate fantasy weapon. So I believe in Keon Coleman. And the thing with Amari Cooper, I'm not worried about that. If he can get on the field and be healthy, he'll be fine too. But I like Keon Coleman. I think the sneaky play here is Mac Hollins, who's become a real reliable target for Josh Allen. There's a connection there, and he's scoring touchdowns enough where Hollins should be added in more leagues.
Yeah. I think, and it's going to happen in certain weeks where you got your receivers on bye. I mean, let's face it, we got Ravens and Bengals and Texans on among the teams that still have bye weeks left. This week, if you have Packer receivers, Seattle receivers, maybe this is a play for you, especially if either Cooper or Coleman are out this week. I could definitely see it.
Yep, 100%. You got to think about these guys who can give you 1 week wonder, and that's all that matters right now is finding a guy like Mac Hollins to kind of give you maybe, I don't know, if he gives you 50 yards and a touchdown, it's okay. I got through the bye.
Yep. Armin asked about T. Higgins, and they play on Thursday night against the Ravens, and another receiver that's hurt. Higgins did not practice. He hasn't practiced since the injury. I don't think he played Thursday night. Fun fact, he hasn't played a full game at Baltimore, and this will be 3 years in a row because he missed entirely last year. If you recall, he did the Sunday night game at Baltimore a couple years ago where he did 10 snaps, didn't get targeted, and then he was done. They pulled him off. It was basically just a decoy. The Bengals were paying fast and loose with the injury report there. I think it's such a with and without difference on this team. Really, I hate it as a Bengals fan whenever he misses a game.
And I think most fantasy managers would agree. We miss him too. And I miss him greatly in one league where I had no DK, no T. Higgins, and then A.J. Brown got hurt. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we have a very small bench in that league. So I was really like, oh, geez, who do I drop now? Because I don't want to lose some of these guys. But with no Higgins, and I really thought that they would save him for this game. I thought, okay, he won't play against the Raiders because they feel they can beat him. They could beat the Raiders without Higgins. Right. He'll be back for the Ravens game. So I'm really hoping that was the case, but I'm going to trust your judgment. You know the Bengals better than I do. So that's a real bummer for me. And I do, again, I know he got shut out 2 weeks ago, but he came back and scored a touchdown this past weekend. I still like Gesicki. That guy's fun, and he's underrated, and he has a rapport with Burrow where he's good for a touchdown. Maybe not a ton of yards. You never see Gesicki rack up the numbers, but I still like him. Of course, he's not T. Higgins.
Right. T. Higgins is like a sports car. He's great, except if he's a little less than 100%, it seems like it really shuts him down a lot there. I don't want to like cast aspersions. I mean, some players he's had some very tough plays all season long, but it's just, these are two like in week injuries, in practice injuries this year that have caused him to miss multiple games. And it's really frustrating. And
contract stuff here, maybe.
Possibly. I think it's kind of like I shouldn't risk myself because you guys didn't, follow through. I mean, they tagged him. They never really even gave him a real offer. I think that's part of the issue. If you, there's a video on Twitter going around about Andrew Whitworth's experience when he was with the Bengals and how they wouldn't even like talk with them. He went to Mike Brown one year to get an extension. And like Katie Blackburn, who's like the daughter-in-law of Mike Brown, who is their front office person, and there's someone else, I forget the name. They basically said, well, that's your deal with him. We're not even going to deal with this. And so it's just kind of like treat people with decency and all that. I feel like the same thing's happening here.
I wouldn't be shocked to hear that. I love Joe Burrow. I think the Bengals can still win a Super Bowl in his career because of him, specifically when he stays healthy. But the Bengals, the Browns, we know. I'm not talking about the Cleveland Browns. I'm talking about the family, the Browns. We know how they've operated. We know who they are. I mean, I lived with the Ford family for decades and decades, and sometimes people don't change. They do what they do, and if you get good players in your grace, you enjoyed it while it lasts. And you would think maybe they would change, but it doesn't seem like they really do too much.
They paid Burrow. They got some free agents. They kind of kickstarted this whole run a little bit too by going and signing DJ Reader. They let Jesse Bates walk, and that was a kind of a sign like, okay, it's still business as usual. They're still terrified of a bad contract, or maybe not terrified. They're just unwilling to do that very often. And I don't know. They thought, oh, we were able to draft Jesse Bates. We'll draft the next Jesse Bates. It's just that easy. It's not that easy. It's just not. They failed in doing so, and here we are. With a substandard defense. So I think the same. They're going to let Higgins walk. We'll just get the next one in the draft. Oh, yeah. How's that Jermaine Burton working out for you? He doesn't even show up for walkthroughs. Come on.
Jeff Erickson, everybody. He'll be here all week.
Ranting. When it comes, don't get me started on my Bengals. Yeah. All right. Tank Dell. He finally had a big game against the Jets on the Thursday night game. If Nico Collins doesn't play, how high is he for you this week?
I would say he's very high because even though the Detroit defense is playing better this year than they did last year, particularly on the back end. Brian Branch is starting to look like he is a legit Pro Bowler every year now. I love him. But they're still susceptible in the passing game more than the run. They've been so good against the run the last couple of years, Detroit has. But this week, Tank Dell, he's going to be relied upon heavily. He should see double-digit targets, in my opinion, if it comes to that, if Mixon can't get it going. Now, Joe Mixon's an exception, too. He could run the ball better against Detroit because he's not your typical running back. But in the end, the passing game will matter. So I'm very high on Dell. Dell, to me, is a top 10 wide receiver to start this week because Stroud needs him that bad. That's pending, of course, that Collins doesn't play, too.
Right. They desperately need Collins back. It's been night and day with and without him. I've got Dell at 20, so I'm a little but it's still a start. It's a little more cautious, but I don't really think it's a sea change difference there. So I do think it's someone you're probably starting and might consider in DFS as well. One more wide receiver I want to talk about, and I know we're running a little long in this area, but George Pickens, do you shut him? Do you push him down a little bit with Marshawn Lattimore possibly lining up against him for the Commanders?
I do not at all. I never thought I would say this, but I believe Russell Wilson is the perfect quarterback for George Pickens. He's the ideal change for him to unlock his fantasy game. So I don't care who's on the other side. George Pickens is a unique player with incredible talent, and I think he was frustrated by the Justin Fields experience. That was all that was, and I think Tomlin allowed for that. He allowed George to kind of be frustrated, and I'm all for it. I'm pro Pickens. I don't care who's on the other side going up against him because he's that good, and Wilson gets the ball downfield. It's something he can still do very well.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, I kind of implicitly trust Tomlin after all these years. I think he's one of the best managers of people. He really gets that aspect of coaching. I'm a big fan. Hate that he's in my division. We're in his division, as the case may be. We're going to talk tight ends coming up next, but first, we're on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. All right. Thank you. If you are listening on the podcast and you heard those ads, if you're streaming live with us, you got to miss those ads. So congratulations. Mike Gesicki, does he get an encore this week against the Ravens?
Oh, geez. You know what? Every week I have this little thing I do. I love betting. I have a thing for first touchdown scorers on DraftKings. A lot of fun. I do that all the time. And I love the deep play ones like a Drew Sample, 65-1. Last week, Nick Vannett hit. He scored the first touchdown for Tennessee, and that was 65-1. I won that one. I was very happy. I lose a lot too, folks, of course. Don't think I don't. But a guy like Gesicki, to me, he's got a lot of tight ends. That's my point. That Cincinnati has a lot of tight ends that I like. I liked Eric All a lot. I know he got hurt, but I guess there's a rapport here. And Gesicki, who seemed kind of like he was lost in the NFL after having a nice start to his career in Miami, is back in business. So let's party. Let's do it. I'm pro Gesicki.
I think he's a receiver, not a tight end. If you say, you know what I mean. I think he lines up. He's better when he lines up out in the slot. He doesn't have to worry about blocking so much because I think that's the part of the job he's not especially good at. And if Higgins is out, I think that probably, and now with Eric All out for the season, I think he's going to get on the field quite a bit because, and who knows, maybe Jermaine Burton playing on Thursday night changes that a little bit. I don't think so anymore. I think that trust has to be regained. The thing that's so frustrating is they talked up Burton so much during the week, and then he no shows, no calls the Saturday walkthrough. I just don't get it. But that's neither here nor there. Let's move on. TJ Hockenson, limited in his return. Not really a surprise. First game back. Do we see him take on a bigger workload against the Jaguars this week?
Well, it's only natural. I mean, it's also the Jaguars, right? So who are we afraid? Are we fearing the Jaguars? The Jaguars looks like they're bottom 6 or 7 against tight ends this season. They've already given up 5 receiving touchdowns to tight ends. And I think Hockenson can make it number 6 this week. I do.
All right. True or false? Cade Otton is a top 5 tight end the rest of the season.
Oh, wow. Well, I still love Dalton Kincaid. Sam Laporta is a great player. Brock Bowers may be the best tight end in football now. I love Evan Ingram. I don't think he is. I say no. Okay.
I think it's close just because of the volume. I think that, and part of it is, does Mike Evans come back after their bye in week 12? Because I know he's out this week. They have the bye next week. Will he come back? Because I think that changes things a lot if and when they get Evans back. But right now they're running so much through Otton right now. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is. And it's so funny that I haven't been on board for it because when Tom Brady was still there, and I was like, okay, Otton, he's going to really thrive while Tom Brady's in-house. And it's never been better than it is right now for Otton with this rash of wide receiver injuries. So, yeah, you're right. It's very, very close. And with the volume in a week-to-week situation, this week at San Francisco, yeah, he's very close to being top 5, no doubt.
Yeah. I think he's right there if he's not there in it exactly, but he's top 10. I will give him that.
Yes.
Let's hit some Q&A to finish here. Big thanks to Michael for the super chat. Let's go ahead and hit him up first. He's got a couple of questions for us. First of all, he asked a wide receiver question for the Saints. Which next guy up wide receiver for the Saints do you prefer? Cedric Wilson, the entertainer, or Mason Tipton?
Every year I have a thing, and one of my things in fantasy football is I love Cedric Wilson, no matter where he signs. Miami, Dallas one year. I think he had 6 touchdowns that one year. I was loving that. He had some nice value in deeper leagues. So I'm going with Cedric Wilson. I think he's a veteran wide receiver who every year, kind of like Khalil Herbert, has a few moments.
Michael has a separate question. He's in a PPR startup dynasty, 4-5 on the season. Would you trade Love, May, and Dell for Purdy and Tracy, or Walker and McLaurin?
Okay, so let's go with the Purdy and Tracy first. I like Purdy a lot. This is Dynasty. You got to think about that. But it's also Jordan Love, right? Jordan Love, we want to give up on him? I can't do that. I'm going to say no to the first one.
Okay. Would you do it, though, for Kenneth Walker and Terry McLaurin?
If you got Drake May and you're giving up May and Love, yeah, I would do that. I think I would do that just because running backs, although I love Kenneth Walker III, they don't last forever. And especially a guy like him, I don't see him having a 10-year career or a Derrick Henry type run.
I agree. I mean, he's already shown he's missed a couple games each year already, as is. I tend to agree. Derrick Henry is a unicorn. Let's always remember that there. I answered this in the chat, but I'll throw it to you. Ferguson or Gesicki this week, full point PPR?
Well, we did talk about it. It feels like Ferguson's due to score a touchdown, and Gesicki just had a monster game. And though we like Gesicki, I never like to go after the monster game, so I'm going Ferguson.
All right. Smitty asked, do I win this trade? Jay Williams. I'm not sure if it's Javonte or if it's Jameson, but I'm going to assume Javonte just because Jameson's – we'll see. He's got a roster exemption this week. He may or may not play. Mixon and Wan'Dale Robinson for Tracy, McLaurin, and Walker. Full point PPR.
Ooh, full point PPR. You're getting McLaurin. Kenneth Walker doesn't catch a ton of balls, but he can catch a few balls for you. So I'd say the winning side of this trade would probably be the McLaurin side because Tracy has come on so strong here.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's go over to Quincy. Would you drop a Bucky or Douglas? I'm sorry, or Wan'Dale. I'm sorry. Just reading this one. Okay, Bucky, Pop Douglas, or Wan'Dale for Keenan Allen. Which one would you drop for Keenan Allen?
Well, I've been a Wan'Dale fan. I thought he was really cheap, low, in PPR specifically, 1 point PPR. Wan'Dale was a guy I drafted a lot. Yep. And Pops Douglas has May, who I think there's a future there. Bucky, I like. The Tucker experiment over there in Tampa Bay, that seems like that's over. So I think I would drop, I'm going to say Wan'Dale, even though I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you look who you have him throwing the ball there. I guess that'd be kind of like the tiebreaker there for me there. Yeah, it's Daniel Jones. Hey, did have a touchdown called back last week at least.
There's positivity.
Yeah, it is. There it is. Let's go. Last question here from Gary. Najee or Marvin Harrison Jr. this week in a full point PPR?
Wow, I can't believe this is where we are, especially with the preseason. This would not have been a question. It just wouldn't have. But, yeah, I think I saw a stat on Twitter yesterday, like 5 of his 9 games, MHJ has really struggled to even break through in PPR leagues. Right now, Najee's locked in. Looks like a career year. I think I'm going to say Najee.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think I'd go that route as well. Just Harrison, I mean, the Miami game, he was such a stud. He looked so good. But they were playing catch-up in that game. And I think game flow matters so much with him. Because I don't think Arizona wants to get that volume otherwise there. I think they'd rather just run the heck out of the ball. And when they can do that, they will. So
yeah, Gannon knows how they win best. If he stays in the game script of Connor having 20 carries or so, that's how they win.
Yep. And now they're kind of working Benson in a little bit more often too, so they can even spell Connor every once in a while and feel still like they're not dropping off too much. All right, big thanks to everybody asking the questions. Big thanks to my guest, Michael Govier. You can catch him 2 times a week on the Palazzo Podcast on YouTube, Tuesdays and Sundays. Free agents, lineups, you got it there. Michael, thank you so much. Really enjoyed having you on.
Oh, it's been a long time, Jeff. I'm so glad we got to do this again. And thanks, everybody in the chat. It's great to get your questions in. It's good to know you. Palazzo Podcast, 2 L's, 2 Z's.
All right, there you go. That's going to wrap it up for today. Tomorrow, we got Mario and John on the RotoWire podcast. Thanks again, everybody, for listening and tuning in. Take care.